Right. The first item on the agenda then is the election of chair. So I need nominations, or we need nominations.
I propose you, Mike, to carry on.
You used to be my friend, John. Any other nominations?
No. I seconded you.
Thank you, Howard.
You used to be my friend as well. Any other nominations? No. Okay, we'll carry on then. Vice chairman, revenge is sweet. I nominate John.
I thought you might.
Could that be seconded by somebody?
Yeah, Howard seconded.
Any other nominations?
No.
Go in, John.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
I'm sure we're both absolutely delighted.
We are, absolutely.
Right, apologies for absence. Are there any, Nina?
Councillor Newell and Councillor Warren White.
Okay, and Charlie's likely to join us at some stage, is he?
Yes.
Right, great. Any declarations of interest? No, good-o. Minutes of the last meeting on the 12th of February. Is everybody happy with them?
Yeah, yep. Nobody's frowning.
Yeah, it's fine with me.
Good. Okay, so we can accept them, can we? Yep, all right.
Yeah.
Moving on to the action list then. Just running down that. Shout out if you see something there which you want a bit of an update on. I mean, it's all a bit held up at the moment with things that are going on elsewhere, like long distance eye tests.
I can give you an update on the town walking competition.
Is that on your report or not?
No, it's not on the report, okay. No.
Yeah, it's kind of in abeyance, isn't it?
Well, yes and no. The upshot of my discussions over the last few weeks with various people from the county and connected organisations is we should be planning something for, I mean, we're always doing this, but obviously COVID-19 has certainly made it happen, is planning for something in the summer of next year. But what I've done is I've produced a paper which I sent around to a number of neighbouring parish and, well, neighbouring town councils. And so far, the only real substantial reply I've had is from Brackley, who said they're not interested. Others have yet to reply, but then we're into I think we're into an even slower cycle of town council decision making. So I guess we'll wait to see. But I still think it's a runner, no pun intended, or a walker or whatever. I think, I mean, the view that's coming forward is that because of the lockdown and people, in a sense, almost having enforced exercise, a lot more people are possibly exercising now than they have. I can certainly speak personally, I know I am. And it may also be that people who have not exercised much before are also going out exercising. So there's a kind of, there's a move in place that we might be able to kind of piggyback on, that, you know, to get people carrying on with this, even when the threat of COVID-19 has retreated somewhat. But I'll wait to see. I mean, it won't be a runner, I don't think, unless we get at least, I don't know, 3 or 4 other local town councils to take part. If nobody else is interested in this, then I think we need to regroup and think again about what we can do just here in Buckingham, but it'd be a different kind of beast altogether.
Shall we perhaps decide that we need a minimum of 3 to go ahead? And would it be reasonable to say, chase up to see if you can get some responses by the next meeting, which we've got scheduled for the 1st of July?
I could chase up people, yeah. I could chase up people. I think that might be pushing it, to be honest, by the 1st of July.
Right.
But I could try. I could try.
Okay, shall we leave that as a
I'll
target? then?
diary a time to chase people.
Okay. Anything else on the action report? We
Just-
were
just-
going to invite Diane Fawcett to the July meeting. I think if she can join us by Zoom, if we're still Zooming, then that would be good. Should we just leave that as it is and Paul hopefully get something sorted?
Yes, yeah. So she was going to come to the last meeting that was cancelled. So she's definitely prepared to come, and I presume she can Zoom.
Okay, but she wasn't included in the circulation for this one.
No, because this was kind of put together slightly hurriedly to talk about quite a specific agenda.
Yeah.
So we'll, but
Okay.
we definitely will.
Yep. We're gonna have the update on the Heritage app later on the agenda, aren't we?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else then, people? And otherwise we'll move forward. Speak or forever, etc. Okay, we'll move on to item 7 then, which is managing the town's reopening. You should all have received John's report, which came about half an hour ago.
Just in time, I'd say.
Yes, all right. Has everybody received it, first of all?
Yes.
Yep. Do you want to introduce it, John?
Yeah, well, obviously, I saw the item on the agenda, and I just thought I have tried to start some discussions on social media hitherto about how we're going to make sure that we don't that we minimise the economic trough as much as possible in our locality. So a couple of conversations were initiated, and reasonably, I think, reasonably well responded to. It's a very big challenge. I think most people are stuck at the moment in the space of how do we manage the day to day, and rather than be thinking too much about the future. But our job, of course, is to think about the future. And some obviously entered into that with some good ideas. So what you've got in this report is a bit of me and a bit of them kind of coming together to suggest maybe things that there are areas where we might be able to work with the town in various ways, or just on our own as a town council, to try and create the conditions within which businesses and retail and people individually are as damaged as little as possible by what is almost certainly an impending recession, if not depression. Things are not looking good. We're kind of cotton walled against it at the moment. But when we begin to really come out of this, I think it's not going to be good news. There's not going to be the bounce back that was originally being talked about. Even the Chancellor is no longer talking in those terms. So those are the ideas. The question is, what do we do with any of them? Have we got the resources? Have we got the wherewithal? Where do we go from now? But those are just my ideas and ideas from the town. Obviously, it's not exclusive. There are lots of other ideas, I'm sure.
One item that did spring out at me is the usual vexed problem of car parking charges and that. And I wonder if we could start to perhaps inquire of the Unitary Authority whether that the moratorium on charges, certainly for the 3-hour start, could continue for, and say, till Christmas.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Mary, can you add to this from your discussions with traders?
Well, first of all, could I just say I didn't receive John's report?
Ah,
I've just checked, so I haven't seen that. But
well, could you just
I
update
have
us on
seen
what
the
trade-
discussions that John's referring to on social media. And I have further tried to solicit some specific trader views on that with very little response. One response was that they would like the person who responded would like a virtual meeting with the council to talk through this, but as she's the only person who has said that they would attend a virtual meeting, I said,
Can I interrupt? Is that Joe?
yeah, that was Joe. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she usually is quite responsive. So I did reach out to some of them individually, and I have sort of posed the question about some of the things that we'll be discussing about pedestrianising, on what they could do to improve the town. And one of the ideas was around that, coming from the Louise and Bin people through Molly, because obviously they're right in the middle of the Market Hill, and would be involved in anything that would happen there. And so I've had a few comments back from them. But generally, it's almost a question of, well, can we wait and see what's being proposed, as opposed to coming up with ideas themselves?
Shame.
Yes, I was a little disappointed.
Anybody else got any comments?
Mike, Howard and Lauren, oh, and Dean and John have got their hands up.
Okay, well, let's have Lauren first then.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, Mary's running alongside your inquiries with traders. I've also contacted a couple of traders that I know, just again to ask the same questions that you asked, what the town could do. Am I off mute, by the way? I am.
Yeah.
And feedback has been, shops would really appreciate some guidance from the town council as to what they could or should be doing. Obviously, they've got some government guidance, but I think some kind of town council official channel of getting that through to them would be useful, and also understanding what the town council will be doing within the town centre, which I know we'll come on to when we discuss the Safer Public Spaces report, just to understand a bit more whether there's going to be kind of one-way systems, that kind of thing. And I think they'd like some transparency and proactive communication from the council on that. There was also a suggestion that would be really useful for the council to promote the different policies that different shops are using. So you'll have seen probably that, I don't know, for example, Leaders Hardware is allowing 2 customers in the shop at one time. Smith and Clay, I think, is 3. The tailor shop next door to where I live will have an appointment only system. Which meant he also fed back on parking as well. So one of the biggest reasons his clients can be late for appointments is because they can't get any parking in town. So I'm wondering whether that links back to some of the comments that you've made already about perhaps withholding those parking charges for some time, until December or so, for however long, to aid perhaps shops where people might have to wait longer and might be worried about kind of having to pay extended parking charges. I'm trying to think what else we got back. Some businesses were just saying it'd be great to have more visibility from the town council, just some kind of form of communication from the town council to kind of update on what's happening generally within the town. So that was quite useful. I think that's all the feedback that I got. We were talking as well in a meeting a while ago about what the Betsy Wynn has done. I don't know if everyone's seen that, but on the news, the Betsy Wynn was featured because they kind of suggested what the pub of the future could look like in terms of social distancing, perspex screens and things. And it was quite a good PR opportunity for them, and Oakman Inn's the company that runs them. So I sort of wonder whether there's anything that we could do in town to be quite front-footed, that could just create some well-timed PR for as and when the town is ready to kind of reopen. I think also we've got to remember that we're working with businesses, but we're also dealing with a very mixed and complex population at the moment. Some are very happy to be out and about mixing and being quite close to people. There are a lot of people that are incredibly wary and quite uncomfortable seeing businesses starting to reopen. So I think we kind of need to make sure that we weave that into our sort of plans and thoughts, really. But that's all I've got on there anyway.
Right, thanks. Can I just throw in that whatever the town council might be able to suggest could help would have to be steered by both government and unitary guidance and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that any of the traders have asked the town council, perhaps Paul can confirm, for any advice. Who's next on the list, Paul?
Howard, I think, was next.
Howard, come on then, mate.
Starting off with the car parking. Car parking charges were originally introduced in order to free up spaces within the car park. After Waitrose opened, there were so many people parking in the car park, especially people going to work, because at that time the free car parks didn't exist, that nobody who wanted to go shopping could park there for any length of time. So people were going round the car park and then going on to Milton Keynes. And the one thing I think we do need is not so much to stop the car parking charges, because 50 pence is not a lot of time, a lot of money for 3 hours when you compare it to surrounding areas, but to have a short-term parking area. AVDC promised to introduce it along where the bins were, the recycling bins, but they never did it. I think that's something we ought to pursue, because the last thing you want is a lot of people parking in Cornwall's Meadow, stopping people who's going to come and spend money. It's got to be policed somehow. It was just ridiculous going back some years now. And then with rate relief for businesses, there is a small business rates relief which the unitary will be administering. A lot of the government help has been focused into helping businesses per se, i.e. through the staffing, help with staffing costs and so on. They're not really helping with the business rates, but nobody who has business rates, I think it's £12,000, should be paying business rates now. It's something which small businesses do suffer because of the amount they have to pay in overheads, especially if they've had to cut the number of people coming into shop. So it's something that we could look at. We may not be able to do much about it, but we could certainly lobby Unitary, who are the administrators for the Small Business Relief Fund, and the government even, because you have to be interested in your small town, your own town, in order to get something done.
Anybody else?
And it was Dean and Mary. Oh no, Dean then John.
Yeah, I have to say I kind of agree with Howard with regards to the parking charges, that I don't think that 50p is an extortionate amount for the length of time that you're entitled to use the car park for. I think it does implement a degree of control over how the car park's used, so that it's not used by people who just sort of park up in the morning and then don't leave until later in the evening. So I think that control could play well into what Lauren was talking about a lack of parking spaces. Although I'm not sure whether you were saying that, you know, by having parking charges, that does make the problem worse for some of the small businesses that are really sort of keen to get more punters in through their doors. But I'm not that keen on the idea of eliminating the cost of parking altogether, because I think there does have to be some incentive for people to actually leave the parking space at some point in the day to free it up for the next punters that want to frequent the shops within the town.
Thank you. Who was next?
John, I
I
think.
think I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of things occur. With regards to the car parking, I mean, yeah, I absolutely appreciate what Howard is saying, is that, yes, there was a problem, I think, where it was difficult to find somewhere to park. But if we could, I mean, this was the business, you know, I produced a spreadsheet to show this when it was all being changed, is that we could up the cost of the longer term, which would therefore discourage people from coming there for the longer term. If they want to park, they can go to the outskirts of the town, to the 2 free car parks on Stratford Road and Western Avenue. And if they want to park in the middle of town, then they pay for it. And I think we also need to combine that with proper enforcement from the Unitary Council. But also, yes, of course, 50p is not very much. I've argued that myself in the past. But right now, we're looking at finding ways to boost people's desire to come into the town centre and help re-energise the local, at least retail economy. And if we can do that just temporarily by suspending the 50p for the first 3 hours charge, whilst maybe increasing the charge for the longer pay, the income may not vary that much, but it will be a fillip for people who want to come in and shop and then go out again and not worry about having to queue and worrying that they're going to run out of time, because 3 hours is a good length of time to do most things. I mean, yes, you could bring in a short-term parking zone now that we've regularized both, you know, they're both on street and off street now come under one council. It's true, although that's rapidly diminishing as a result of the building work next to the community centre, of course, where they've moved the recycling bins and taken over about 3 or 4 car parking spaces that were there hitherto to put in their new entrance, of course. But I would still say there's a very good case for a moratorium on the 3-hour charge, just for a while, and to see if that makes a difference. Let's evaluate it and see if that makes a difference. It would also go a long way to addressing a lot. It's the usual thing. If anybody complains, they always complain about having to pay for car parking. And whilst we still live in there's still cash machines, most people don't carry cash with them anymore. A lot of people now are just carrying their credit card when they go out, and they're swiping for things and so forth. So until the machines are converted, it's going to prove to be a little bit problematic for a lot of people. That's one point. The second point, in terms of social distancing and guidelines for shops, guidelines for the pavements and so forth, that's got to be a unitary Buckinghamshire Council decision, of course, because they are the ones in charge of pavements and rights of way and so on. And I think obviously the town council can assist with that, and obviously will assist with that, but the initiative has to come from the authority who's in charge of those spaces. And obviously we've got a report later on the agenda to look at some of that. And thirdly, in terms of pedestrianisation, I think we've been around the houses on this several times. It would be difficult to do. But one thing we could do, maybe, is say that during the week when the market isn't happening, why not make the space between outside bins, Barclays and the chemist, make that space available for cafes who wish to, or just simply put out some tables there, care of the town council, that people can get their takeaways and go and sit down there and have a cup of coffee in the open air with adequate social distancing. So in other words, we create the kind of a sort of proto-pedestrianisation, a bit of cafe society in the middle of the town when no one's there during the market days. We could do that now. I don't know who owns that land. We put the market on there, so I guess we have some, as a town council, authority over it. Why don't we use that space now?
John,
Sorry,
it's
Mike.
car parking. It's car parking. The bit along the wall from the old jail and the bit on the side where the shops are.
No, not there. No. I'm talking about the square, out between Barclays and the chemist.
Bullring.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Is that the bullring?
Yeah.
Well, you could also put tables out. No. I mean the square where the garden chap goes and the chap who sells bread.
That's right. That's the bullring.
Is it? I thought the bullring was the bit near the bus stop.
No, that's the cattle pens.
Well, that's a bit bloody confusing. Bulls and cattle are in the same category in my head.
I'm telling you what they're called, what they're
Okay.
known as.
So the bullring, and arguably the cattle pens too, could become places for people to have outdoor coffee.
Yeah.
Could I pick up on two of those points?
Go on in. Go on, Mary.
Thank you. The last one first, your point about the bullring, that was one of the comments that I received back from the people in Bin. And one of the comments they made was the fact that because it's on such a slope, it's very difficult even for things like the music in the market and things like that, the events that we have already. And for putting tables out there on that slope, it's very difficult. Is there any way that could be leveled off in some way to make it a more of exactly what John's suggesting, an area where you can have social distance tables and people can be out there and enjoying the sunshine?
And we would also, of course, have to consider who's putting out any tables and perhaps umbrellas and bringing them in again afterwards.
Exactly, but I think that if that was an opportunity, the other businesses around that square could take on a responsibility for doing that, because it's increasing business to their restaurants and pubs. I think that's quite an easy thing to negotiate, following on from that. But another point, if I may.
I think it's a good idea, Mary. I think we can investigate maybe some temporary scaffolding, staging of some kind that might be worth seeing if it works.
Yes.
It would need fencing on the lower side, and there are safe splits.
Yes, I mean, there's sort of other considerations. The other point, if I may, is the car parking. And one of the issues that when we've raised it in the past is I've suggested that to encourage people into the shops without changing the charging, that shops could offer a refund of the parking charges with any purchase. That has been rejected by a lot of the retailers because it's a cost to them. So is there any possibility, rather than stopping the charge but redirecting that so that there is a refund process? So if retailers said, well, I'll refund your 50p if you purchase something in my shop, the customer is happy because they're not paying for charging. And if that's refunded rather than zero rated, as it were, then the shopkeeper is not out of pocket either. So that would encourage people not only to park, but go into the shops themselves rather than just using it for long-term stay.
I would suggest that would involve quite a bit of administration, as well as wherever the money came from if we refunded. And the powers that be would say, no, we'll just go with the free parking because that's, there's no administration other than the parking machines. Who's next?
Louise had her hand up.
Sorry?
Louise.
Hello.
Hello.
It's just a small thing, actually, because I've driven to Buckingham a few times over the last few weeks and the car parks are practically empty.
Yep.
There's absolutely no problem whatsoever parking at the moment.
At the moment.
And Nigel's. Sorry.
Okay, Nigel?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, as you know, we've got this coffee shop, Coffee One. If you took the area outside the pharmacy that you were talking about, it's on a slope, so it'd be difficult to put standing tables, but would it be worthwhile for the council to put up, wouldn't cost a lot of money, a series of benches which were adjusted to the slope and which were for the use of the coffee shops and the takeaway food shops, and actually just create an area which these shops could, it would encourage them to reopen, because at the moment, for example, coffee shops, we're just waiting for them to come back and say, apart from not paying you any rent, we're going to pay you half rent in future because we can only get half the people into the coffee shop with social distancing. So I think it would be a very good thing for the town to take the initiative and create 2 or 3 outdoor centres where people could sit and take their takeaways to that area. And I think we all know that social distancing outside, as long as you're in the fresh, free air, you can be a lot closer than if you're, in one room. So is that something that the town council could undertake or not?
It would have a cost, but it's something that we could consider, I suppose. It can just go on the list with everything else for us to have a look at.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
For that, I think.
Dean, did you want to come back?
And Claire had a response.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say that the area outside Prezzo or Prego, I can never remember which one's which, lends itself really well to that kind of thing, because it's already flat and it's a nice long area which could accommodate lots of different businesses. The unfortunate thing about that area is it's not directly outside bins and some of the other cafes and restaurants that exist. Yeah. So I would kind of, if there were a cheaper option, which I think Nigel was alluding to, of adjusting the levels of seats and tables, and that would seem like a more practical way of dealing with that slanted. But I would say the area outside Prego or Prezzo is the area that lends itself best and would look really nice with lots of chairs and tables and places for people to eat and dine and be outside and social distance.
I think you're right. It would, however, it would need people clearing tables and getting their stuff back to whichever shop it came from and all sorts of things like that. It would be mainly takeaway type cups and all the rest of it. So there's a lot to think about there.
Yeah.
Anybody got anything new to suggest?
So we've got Claire, Nigel, Howard, and then Charlie.
Ah, welcome, Charlie. Let's hear from Charlie so we know what he looks like. No?
Couldn't find my unmute. Sorry I was late. And sorry if I'm about to say a whole lot of stuff that's already been said before. But I just wanted to sort of support a couple of things if going to the council is part of that process. I think that any time that the town council can use its re-emergence and the town centre re-emergence to do something and try something different will help encourage people to come back. I get why dropping the parking in the long term, the 50p in the long term probably isn't a go ahead, but as it's something that can be reinstigated relatively quickly and might give a good news story to bring people back into the town, I certainly would support a short-term pause on that fee to bring people in, but it would have to be clear it was a short-term thing. And also, I think that it's not beyond the realms of possibility to get a permanent road closure for a couple of weeks, potentially, of the bit round the jail. We closed Market Hill, and I'd certainly support that road closure if it allowed the town council to do something a bit more ambitious with that space in the early days of bringing people into town. It would be short term, but I think it might be a nice opportunity and to bring a feel of goodwill and spirit with the place, because the more space we've got, the easier it's going to be able to do things safely.
Thanks, Charlie. Howard?
Just about ownership to start with. The area down by the cattle pens was owned by AVDC, and I think the bullring was also owned by AVDC, or it might have been the county council. But either way, it's immaterial now because it's all in one council. One of the problems with having an open air eating area, you have to have somebody responsible, especially for things like breakages. You couldn't really allow china out there or glasses, because I think beer glasses are banned, or maybe they're only banned for the markets, for the festivals. But somebody would have to clear it up, and nobody likes clearing up. So somebody would have to take ownership. It's a nice idea. The alternative is to have disposable cups, and then we're back into the plastics and the paper cups. It's a really good idea, though, to try and encourage the cafe society. But I think you have to allocate whatever area you have to a particular establishment and say it's their responsibility to look after it.
Okay, thanks. Who's next?
Nigel.
Nigel?
Yeah, I think that's what Howard just said. It just occurred to me that if you've got the one outside Costa's because of the flat payment, that's fine. But I would be quite happy to put it to our people in conjunction with us, whereby we might put up the benches on the area outside the pharmacy on the level, if that was exclusively for the use of coffee number one. So coffee number one would have the benefit of the sales, and they would also be responsible for clearing it up and cleaning it up and keeping it tidy. But I don't know, I missed who owned that bit of land, but if we could be given permission to do that, I'd happily investigate to see whether we could put the benches out and get coffee to keep it clean.
I think I detected a declaration of interest hidden in there somewhere or the other.
Yes.
Who's next?
Claire and Mary.
Claire, right.
Hi, just from the market point of view, obviously to emphasise that anything that does go up in the bullring would have to be easily moved away, because we are desperate for every inch of space in the market to spread people out as much as possible and spread our queues out. So just leaving benches there or moving things to the side would cause us a lot of problems. We would be looking for something that could be completely removed on those days.
Good thinking. Next.
Can I come back on that as well? The idea of the road closure would cause issues with deliveries and collections, and equally, as Claire says, the distancing for anybody queuing at the shops as well as the market on that area.
No, Mary, no, because you'll remember that from when we did the walk around the other market towns and that some of the closed off areas had deliveries before 8 o'clock in the morning or after 6 in the evening, and that would get round that.
Yes, if it's normal situation, but we're not in a normal situation now. One of the comments raised. Yeah, one of the comments raised by Bin, if that was pedestrianised along the Market Hill, then because they're doing a takeaway service now, people need to arrive in cars, etc., as well as the commercial deliveries. So it's not just a traffic problem that can be solved by 8 o'clock in the morning. And equally, a lot of places find it difficult for deliveries at 8 o'clock, before 8 o'clock, because of the distances they have to travel. They can't always guarantee that that can happen.
Yeah, but these are all issues that need to be considered in with the proposal, aren't they?
Yes, but
Yeah.
the idea of having it on the bull ring would negate any issues regarding access. It just means the issue that of removability for spreading people out for market days, etc. The final point is, if it's an exclusivity that you're looking at, I think you would get a lot of objection from the other establishments in the area. I don't think, and if we're going to do that, then it ought to be for all of the establishments around that square, not just one individual, to overcome the idea of ownership.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Can I come in? I mean, what we need really almost is obviously are some tables that can be easily removed so that the market can be in its usual place. I mean, I don't know whether it's possible in design terms, whether you could have like a table that could also double up as a stand for a stall for a marketplace. I don't know whether that's possible or not. Somebody else might have thought of that. And I don't think you could say one shop would have exclusivity, but maybe collectively together they could all contribute and chip in for some of the costs that might be involved. That means all the coffee shops and pubs within reach, that would go from probably the Squires all the way along to the tea shop, but underneath the old jail sort of thing, as well as Coffee Number One and Ben's, and also, I mean, other places have got outdoor areas anyway, so you might struggle to get the King's Head involved, but they might be willing to do some of it.
Yeah.
I think it needs investigating. I think we can talk till the cows come home about it this afternoon, but
Yeah.
I think someone needs to go out and have a look at it, and think about the possibilities and see what else other towns have done, and then bring that report back here to the meeting in July. But we've got to move on this quickly because the summer will be receding by then, and the sooner we can get this up and running, the better it'll be for local, hostelries.
Yes, and it's likely that shops will be reopening in mid-June anyway, so we don't have that long.
No.
Can I just make 2 points really quickly, just on that? I think there's a real positive of thinking about the cattle pen space and somewhere that's visible in the centre of town. I think when you have events like the Bastille Day there, they've been absolutely fantastic, and the buzz they create and the benefit of having or using those kind of spaces like that is, sorry.
Hello, Mila.
And they're so visible when people are driving through as well. So, sometimes you're driving through somewhere and there's kind of obviously something going on, or it's got quite a buzzy vibe. So I think it'd be really good to attract external people into the town as well. The bit I was going to say about not necessarily the bull ring, but the area that's outside Costa, M&Co and Bin, those parking spaces are used so much every day. And I would just worry if we were to close that area, pedestrianise that area, which I think was mentioned earlier, the impact that might have on shops like Boots, where people just want to literally nip in. I know we want to support independence, but I think we also need to support our sort of larger sort of businesses in town as well. And I just think the loss of those spaces would be potentially quite sort of great in impact for those businesses that are there. So it's just a couple of points on that. I'll put my best. I'm going to go back on mute now, just in case.
Thanks.
Can I just
I'd like to move on from this bit fairly soon if we can, and look at other areas. Go on then, Paul.
Okay, well, just thinking in terms of what we can do following this meeting, what we could do as a town council is try and get around those shops and either speak to people or put something through their doors in the next couple of days, just to try and share some of those options so we get a feeling of what people are up for and what they're not up for. If Charlie and Howard are happy with it, we could, between us, I guess, work out who to talk to at Buckinghamshire Council about getting the appropriate highways permission and any other links with economic development people who might be able to support and help us in terms of thinking around business. And the same thing for parking, actually, maybe between Howard and Charlie, we could work out officers to talk to about parking to clarify exactly what the current arrangements is and put something in that's going to be helpful as a request from us. So we could get it. So I think the request is that we'd like an extension on free parking and some feedback on cashless and when it's going to happen. At least get some feedback on that. And just in terms of general next steps for anything we're talking about, we're probably going to have to do stuff before the next meeting of EDWG, unless you want another meeting in between. We have got the town centres, the council's town centre events committee on the 8th of June. So if there's anything that we need really quick decisions on that involve money, we'd take it through that route probably. So we would to environment the week after if it was there.
Paul, is it possible that town centre and events could stick some money that hasn't been used on events because they've had to be cancelled or postponed aside to perhaps help with some of this if there's likely to be a charge involved?
Yes, that is definitely possible. I think I can imagine a debate on the subject amongst town councillors, but I think we should definitely put on town centre and events agenda feedback from this meeting and suggestions, and then we'll work out exactly what they look are like in the next couple of weeks or so. Dean's got his hand up.
Yeah, just very quickly, if you wanted to test something out, and I think that's what we're talking about in this first stage, then the quickest and easiest place to test it out would be that area by the bus shelter, just to see what the community's response is to having outdoor spaces. So that could involve, for one Saturday or one Sunday, whatever day it is we decide, renting out a load of tables and chairs and just whacking them out there, letting the shop to know, maybe allocating to individual shop owners, and just see how it goes and see what the response is. And if it's very positive and it's packed full and there's rubbish everywhere because it's been so busy, then we know we've got a good problem to deal with. That's
okay.
Rather than trying to establish anything too long term.
That area is a fair way from a lot of the businesses.
I agree.
Is,
but in terms of just
so it would
establishing
be
an
very
interest.
difficult for those businesses to have the staff to be able to ensure that that's cleaned and have any form of control over that area.
No, I agree, Mary. I think in terms of just establishing whether there's any interest to begin with.
Okay, I'm keen to move away from this now on to any other ideas that there might be out there, and also to bring in the bit about supporting Buckingham's businesses. Is there anything? I know we don't have other than Nigel, we don't have a business rep as such, but I wonder if anything's come up that might help them, or if we can canvass them for a few ideas or something like that. Nigel's pondering. He's got the pondering look on.
Unfortunately, I didn't hear that. I'm sorry, Mike.
I was wondering if we've talked about retail, particularly the sort of cafe society type stuff. I wonder if there's anything that businesses might want to throw into the arena about getting back up and running again.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of mentioned a few ideas earlier that might have fed into that portion. I probably won't go through them again. But I think the businesses that I've spoken to are definitely looking for more guidance and support and communication from the town council as to what they should or shouldn't be implementing.
Yes,
that will come through
most of that, Lauren, is most of that's going to have to come from the unitary, government via unitary and so forth.
I agree. I also think it would be worthwhile, definitely, for the council to be seen to be facilitating that. Just a nice sort of PR exercise, really, for the council as well to be shown. Even if it's signposting, some kind of proactive communication would be good, I think.
Okie doke.
Would a communication with the local paper asking for ideas and some, outlining what we're talking about with the open spaces, and just see if we can get a reaction from the public and also the business owners as to how that might benefit them. I would have thought the outside space is predominantly going to be of interest to the takeaway food people, but that's a big part of the town centre anyway.
Yep.
We could do a press release from this meeting if people want us to put that out on social media and the advertiser to get a kind of 7-day response back from people.
I'd agree with that.
Yep.
Let's get out there. Let's show that we're thinking about this stuff, and let's be open and receptive to people's ideas. The more we can create this buzz in the town to be thinking about the future, the better it'll be, because it shows proactivity. It shows that we're listening, and it shows that, you know, where we can, we will do things. But also, as Lauren just said, we can signpost as well.
Yep.
Lauren's got her hand up again.
Yeah, sorry. Another thing I was just thinking, this lockdown has changed the way people are working so much. So many people are working from home, and probably this will last, this kind of flexibility I think is going to last quite a long time. We talked about hot desking opportunities in town before, but I just wonder whether there's something we could do about that a little bit more. The thinking behind it is that if we're able to provide kind of variety from home working, kind of nice spaces in town, that's kind of increasing footfall, it's kind of creating community and that sort of thing. I'm not sure if I'm being that clear on that. I just wonder whether there's a bit of work we could do around looking again, because I know the university's got the fantastic Vinson building when that's reopened, but there might just be something we can do ongoing that just supports probably what will be an increasing number of home workers in the town and the surrounding area.
There was an idea which came up at the conference that we went to earlier in the year about utilising empty shops. And you could utilise an empty shop as hot desking with a little bit of organisation. And that would be a very good use of the shop, and it would also provide people with the space.
Very true. Okay, can we move on then?
I'll just make one point under this item, just to say that in terms of the markets themselves, the government's announced that the market can open properly from 1st of June. So we'll be promoting that heavily leading up to that. So that should be a good point. And we're also going to reintroduce the flea market, hopefully on the same day, and gradually get people back on the flea market as well. So that will be one thing that helps us hopefully get a few more people back into town. And Dean has got his hand up, Mike.
So very, very quickly, if we're being given a date for most retail shops to open, which is sort of fairly imminent, is there a way that we can kind of brand that opening day with Buckingham's open for business, and every shop has an opportunity to kind of display we're open for business in a Buckingham branded way? It wouldn't take too long to turn something around. We could post out to individual retailers, cafes and restaurants.
That's something that was in the back of my mind when I asked Paul whether we could perhaps release some money via TC&E, you know, for poster stickers and God knows what else. Right, I'd like to move it on now to a fairly brief, I think, discussion probably about the Safer Public Spaces report, which has been circulated, all 46 pages of it, and which you will, of course, all have read and inwardly digested. Any comments?
Yeah, I got a comment. I think in terms of the Town Council response to this report, I think it's mostly for the Environment Committee to look at this, because there are implications for us in terms of how we manage our green spaces. And I guess, as we've said already this meeting, a lot of the changes in terms of changes to rights, you know, to the footpaths and pavements and so on, are ones that are going to have to be initiated by the UBC.
Yeah.
And we can support that and signpost, as Lauren says, but in the end, we don't own those spaces. They do, and therefore they're going to have to get on the case and make this happen. I mean, hopefully with consultation, although that's a bit of a premium at the moment, as we know. But I do think that we need to be pushing them to be responding to this.
Okay, I don't know what others thought. I thought it was typically vague. There were no real ideas in there, and I didn't find it particularly helpful. It was a bit overblown, but well, it is what it is. Anybody else got any other comments on it?
Lauren's got a hand up, and
yeah, I confess I didn't manage to read every single page of the document, but the bits that I did flick through were quite interesting in terms of the impact that it could have on areas like the access to the Waitrose area from the car park, and kind of how that could end up being one way. There's some of it's quite significant there, isn't it? And it just made me also think about some of the pinch points in town. For example, there's some awkward pedestrian behaviour outside Smith and Clay, where there's no alternative pathway, and you get kind of people snarled up at one end and trying to avoid other people going out on the road. So it'll be really interesting to see how that's kind of interpreted. But I also think businesses will probably want to be, I don't know how much of this will be put on them and how much they'll be consulted on it given the time that we have. But obviously, if you're introducing one-way systems, that might benefit some shops and it might penalise others in terms of access to them. So I don't know how much consultation there can be given the time, but I suspect shops will want to know that they're not going to be negatively impacted.
That's right, and good luck with anybody that tries directing the public on a one-way system or something or the other. The point you make about clays is a very valid one. It's actually, if there's a queue there, there's nowhere to cross the road to miss them, is there, for social distancing? Well, not without taking your life in your hands or.
Well, Smith and Clay could use the space they've got next to their shop as a place for people to queue in if they wanted to.
They can. You've still got two-way pedestrian traffic outside the shop, and the pathway's not quite wide enough to accommodate a 2 metre distance. So that's what's going to be advised for path use. And
the yard, John, that they've got next to the shop is a bit of a builder's yard at the moment, so can't actually be used as waiting space. Anyone else?
Mary and Charlie.
Charlie, let's hear from you.
You're muted, Charlie.
Yeah, sorry, it takes me a while to find the button. Yeah, Mike, I share your slightly mediocre opinions of the report. I thought it's got lots of lovely pictures of examples, but there are in there some quite high level things like how you do separate queues in and out of buildings. Smith and Clay is a great example of how that's difficult. Just to pick up on what John said, a lot of this is council land. So I will be following up with the council to work out what the protocol is and the advice they'll be giving to the council. But it's probably a good time for people in this forum to email me if they want to, if they've got specific things that they want to make sure do, or even probably more likely don't happen, or might cause problems if that is part of the council's kind of protocol for how to manage this. So I'll follow that up and I'll get that to Paul to as soon as I can. But do email me if there's anything that's concerning you specifically, or if you know have got any thoughts on that. Just also one thought that just occurred to me is whether Cornwall Meadow, which has 2 entrances, could be one-wayed, but I don't know if that's a good idea.
You mean the pedestrian?
Yeah, the pedestrian bit.
Yeah. Well, up one way and down the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good luck, as I said, in getting the public to follow that.
Yeah, it's like in Tesco's, you have one-way aisles, but people think that you can still, it's what matters is the trolley, not the person, but
That's right. Somebody else wanted to come in, I think. Paul, did they?
Mary.
Mary, come on.
The comment about one way in Meadow Walk was one of my comments I was going to make. So yes, I agree with that. I think it is. But also about regarding the document itself. One of the things that I got out of it was a slightly more long-term view rather than what happens on day one of unlock. And that is in terms of encouraging the more cycling and more walking and more public transport, which is something we've discussed quite a bit in the past. But is this now giving us the impetus to see that this is really the time that we must be looking at these sorts of things? And try and pick up on some of the ideas we've maybe rejected in the past, or new ideas that may come up in terms of encouraging different forms of transport.
Good thinking. I noticed that the cycle racks outside Waitrose, it's a bit of a job to get at them. I mean, I've cycled downtown umpteen times, and to get at them, you've actually got to stop the queue and let it move on, half of it move on a bit, get your bike in and lock it up, and then go through the same thing on the way back, because it's queuing right in front of them. And it's that kind of thing as well, which does need considering. Anybody else?
Just a quick one. I've listened to a really interesting piece by, I think it was Chris Hoy, who is a cycling champion of a city up north. I can't remember, my memory's gone.
Manchester. Greater Manchester.
Oh, I thought it was Manchester. I've written that down, but I was second guessing myself. It was something that was really interesting was that obviously they're trying to change behaviour as well and capitalise on the fact that more people are going out and cycling and using that as both a commuting means, but also sort of family fitness. And he was saying people are more likely to do this kind of thing if they've got a friendly, accommodating environment to do it in. So a lot of people have gone out cycling because there are fewer cars on the roads. The weather's been lovely, but it's just quite interesting. I'll see if I can find a bit more on that because it's just interesting psychology behind it that might help with any of the efforts that you guys are putting in around encouraging that kind of behaviour.
Okay, anyone else? Paul, anybody got their hand up?
No.
No, okay, let's move on then to agenda item 8, the Bucks Explore. Louise, I think it's your pigeon.
Hello.
Hello.
So the main news is that obviously we had to delay the launch we delayed it from February till April because we haven't given ourselves enough time to get it done, and then we had to delay it from April until the end of May because all of the conditions around public exercise and what you're allowed to go out for meant that it was really difficult to test it and do all of the things that we needed to do. The advantage of that has been that we've been able to use that bit of extra time that we've had to add some of the things that we wanted to have but weren't sure if we would have time to do. So now most of the routes have audio and there's more activities, it's more interactive in that sense. And it's going to launch tomorrow at lunchtime.
Oh.
Wow.
Do you want to does everyone want to have a look?
If we're not at this meeting, how do we know?
We made a tactical decision not to do too much advanced. It's coming out soon because with a digital product, it's a bit difficult to trail it in advance because you're not letting anyone actually go and look at it until it's launched. So there's been a little bit of building up the social media, but we haven't done that much otherwise, and we will start doing that in a full-on way tomorrow. Emma, in fact, has been helping me put together a lot of social media stuff for the launch day tomorrow. You want to have a look at the app though, because I can show you.
Go on
then. Right. Just There we go. So this is obviously just looking at it on the computer. There's a few final changes to make. On here, there'll be the odd thing that doesn't necessarily work because we're not on a phone. But go through the selection of different routes that you can try. So let's just pick one, the Heritage for Kids one.
Louise, I suggested that the little squares which are still, the routes that are still being worked out could be put under one as coming soon. Is that possible?
So we were looking at doing something like that. I think at the moment we're going to leave it and see how it works, because now that when you're on your phone, now that we've got 6 available, it doesn't look the same way it did when we only had 2 available, because the available ones take up most of your phone.
Right.
So I was a bit unsure about it visually, but I'm happy with it now. So this is the kids one. What happens is, at the moment, this is the test version of the app, and it's all set up so that you can access all of the routes and all of the locations remotely. And so what will happen tomorrow is that function gets turned off, but there's a switch in the settings. So you can go, you have to physically go to the start location for your route, or if it's an Explore as you go route, any of the locations to start. And once you get there, when you arrive, you get a little ping on your phone. It opens up. You can see some pictures. This is the kids' route, so the text is very short.
Sorry, Louise, do you mean you can actually start the route anywhere and it'll pick up where you're going, sort of thing?
Yeah. So
Okay.
you can't see it on this one because, like I say, it's not turned on, but there's a red arrow that shows where you are. And then there's, so you can see there's a blue flag for places you haven't been to. And then there'll be green flags for places that you have been to. And that helps you navigate around to the different locations.
Okay.
So for the kids route here, we've got a little bit of text. As many of the routes as we could do, we've got some audio. So it's literally just someone reading out the text, which is really helpful. Little activities, we've got different ones. We've got questions, we've got actual suggested activities. Haven't pressed the right button. Anyone know what a burgage is?
What is?
A burgage.
It's a long, narrow bit of garden at the back of your house where you grew your veggies. It's a burgage.
It is basically, yep.
Yeah, I see.
So you did, then you go on to the next place and you walk there, and it's the same process again. So this is one that's it's a discovery, it's an exploration app, so an activity-based act. So you have to start in one particular place and you have to go around on a set walk to find all the different places. Go back to the other routes, show you an example of a different one. So on historic, for example, if you go through, I've been playing with this one already, so they're all green. So we visited these different places. If we look at Oddfellows, we've got all the graphics for these as well, which are lovely. You've got, again, pictures, text, an audio version of the text. There's a different kind of activity. So these ones are more go and find something, have a look, explore. So for the green route, we've got a lot of just those sort of classic countryside things that you can do with kids, making willow crowns and that kind of stuff. And then on this one, I think I've boxes. So once you've visited the last location in a route, so here we go, I've done, yay, I've been to Chandos. I've looked at that. Right, so once you finish the route, you can then got sharing options. So I'm guessing it won't work on here, but this comes up, you press the camera. Yeah, it's not gonna let me do it. And it takes a picture of you. You can take a picture of yourself with the image from this particular route overlaid over the top. So for this one, it would be the old jail. And then you can share that directly to different kinds of social media to spread it out that people have done different routes and that they've enjoyed it. So there's various other things, settings, it records where you've been, and you can then go back and look at things on the routes that you've done. There are a lot of other routes that we're planning to launch. Some of them are almost done, just need a little bit more on them. And some of them need quite a bit of work, but we'll probably do another batch of routes in the summer at some point, whether that's just 2 maybe in the summer, and then intermittently through the year. I've had the big advantage over the last few weeks is that we have been able to go out of the house more, which means I've been able to get some volunteers to go and test the routes out. That's given us so much really helpful information that we couldn't get by testing things remotely. And yeah, people have enjoyed it, so that's good.
Well, great, thanks for that, Louise. That's
Brilliant.
Useful.
Can't wait.
Tomorrow. You put a plea out for some words for publicity, etc., Louise.
I did.
What's happening with them?
So we've got press release has been drafted and accepted by the National Lottery Heritage Fund, so that will go out tomorrow when it launches. Some of the other quotes we're going to use on social media as part of the launch, and tonight we've also going to have on Russell doing a bit of a bell ring, and the app is coming soon.
Great. Okay. Anybody got any questions or queries before Louise is shot? Or I am.
Dean and then Nigel.
I think it looks really good. I just wonder, have you shared this with Bucks Culture, Louise? Because they'd be really interested in sharing this more widely for you, Lally and Julius.
I haven't spoken to them directly, but I think they're following me on Instagram, so I will talk to them. I'll talk to Lally about it.
Great.
I have spoken to the Heritage Fund about it. They've had a look and they're very happy, and they've said they thought it was really good for the grant category that we're in, price category that we're in. We've done a really good job, which
and the only other group that might be worth approaching is radio, like BBC Three Counties would be interested in this. They do a community slot in the afternoons most evenings, so perhaps give them a chat as well.
BBC Three Counties.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually going to do a launch thing with them. They were going to come out and do, their treasure hunt thing.
Yeah.
They were going to come and do it, but I mean, that's not going to happen now, but maybe we could do that with them at another time.
Great.
Can I chip in there? I mean, I think this is nationally important. I mean, I think the town council should be promoting this to some national papers and news outlets as well, because I think, this is about, getting the town back on its feet,
Absolutely.
out exercising, enjoying heritage, all the things we want people to do in the new normal. And I think we should be promoting it on that basis.
Yeah, it was really fascinating. I thought that was a super bit of software, Louise. I was going to mention that the other evening, I happened to switch on to get The Story of England by Michael Wood, a well-known historian. I don't know if anybody else might have seen it. And it was, this particular episode was on Kibworth Village, which is a small village town. And it went through the history of this village, and it was fascinating. And I just thought that, in fact, the story of Buckingham would be even more fascinating. Not only have we got the shenanigans of the Dukes of Buckingham, etc., but we've also got the recent discovery of the 42 skeletons, and we've got a medieval history, and we've got a huge amount of history. And I was wondering whether, in fact, we might try and approach the people who did The Story of England, or somebody else of any contacts, to do a history of Buckingham and try and get it onto television. Because what we're really looking for, with all this effort that's been put in by Louise and everybody else, we need people. And some sort of television program on Buckingham would be fantastic for exposing the interests of the town itself. And there's a matter of, the question really was, is there anybody that we know that we should talk to investigate whether we could promote this as a TV serial, as TV program? And Roger Edwards, our chairman, did say that Mark Cole was involved with television. But is there anybody else, or has anybody else got any other ideas, if they think it's a good idea, as to who we might approach? That was interesting.
Well, national contacts, no, I don't.
So, Nigel, we could take that approach of find whoever produced The Story of England, rather, and ask them. That's totally a good option that we could try.
Yeah, well, I know who it was, and we know how to get in touch with Michael Woods, I think, who's probably still a history professor at Manchester University. So they're happy to contact them if people generally think it would be a good idea to start some early investigations.
Why not?
Yeah.
Howard's got his hand up, and so it's Lauren.
That's your
I saw
action,
the same.
Nigel. That's your action, Nigel. If you could feed back on the 1st of July, please.
Very good.
Anybody else? Howard?
Yeah, I saw the same program as Nigel, and it is a really interesting program. What they did have is a lot of documentation throughout the ages. And that's one of the reasons why they went there, both through the National Archives and local collections and private collections, and they could even trace the field boundaries and so on. I think, before we go to anyone, you need to have some evidence that you can actually give a good story and you can show how the history developed.
Yeah, you're quite right, Howard. I forgot to mention that, of course, we've got Ed Grimsdale, the Buckingham historian. And of course, he's got chapter and verse and everything that's ever happened here. So I did actually suggest to him that what we really need is a little synopsis of Buckingham's history with the sex tourism from the Dukes of Buckingham, etc., and the skeletons and things like that. So I'm quite happy to get Ed to put a synopsis together and then take it to Michael Wood's lot.
We haven't yet got the archaeology report on the 42 skeletons. I wonder if Charlie's still there, if he can do a bit of nudging.
There's a bit of what?
If Charlie's still there, if he could perhaps nudge the developers about the about those 42 skeletons, because we haven't seen the archaeological report yet. Are you still there, Charlie?
Yeah, no, I'm still here. Yes, I'm not in direct contact, but I can talk to the archaeological team, see if we get some information.
I think they're still awaiting for the report from the developer's own archaeologist, from their initial dig.
Yeah, it's difficult for me to put pressure on developers. You should see how I get on with Nigel Morrison. But
it's part of the planning thing, though, isn't it, that the report be received? So if you went at it that way, I'm not telling you how to do your job. You know how to do it.
Sure, I'm being helpful, then I will do that.
Thank you. I would have. Anything else on Bucksplaw?
Yeah, can I just add a couple of bits? I've got a friend who's a documentary maker who's had his 2 existing projects canned indefinitely due to the lockdown and the economic downturn. So it might be a slightly trickier sell than normal, but I think a synopsis would be a great way to start. I was also going to say, Louise, I'm sure they're on your radar, but social media wise, there's the lady that runs MK Kids, which is a massive Facebook group packed full of hints and tips on free activities to do with children in the Milton Keynes and the surrounding area, covers Buckingham as well. She's also a producer for BBC Three Counties, so she's a good one to know. There's also the Family Ticket, which you're probably aware of, and Days Out with the Kids. These are all local social media presences that should be interested, I think, especially they're gagging for new places to go. Everybody's fed up of their local area and they want to get out of it, so we'll have something new to do in it. Another thing I've had some success with before would be something like the One Show. I quite like the sort of thoughts that you were talking about, kind of Buckingham reopening and things like that, and this might be quite a nice hands-on feel-good community story that would interest them. So that's just one to potentially pitch to as well. But yeah, that was all of it. I think it looks brilliant. It looks really, really good, and I can't wait to give it a go.
Right, I'll get in touch with you. Well, I'll get a synopsis from Ed, and then I'll give you a shout, and we can have a discussion about who to go to first.
Okay, thank you for that. Anything else? Shall we move on? We'll go to the TIC website update then, Emma.
No, I don't have much of an update. We are pushing forward with the website because we would like it up and running for when the TIC reopens, which we don't have a set date for, but hopefully in a month or so's time. Yeah, there's not much of an update other than what I put in the report.
Okay, and the recommendation is that we note the report and agree to contact local attractions and business for help with content for the new website as they are able.
Yeah.
Can't see anything wrong with that. Everybody's happy with that, I guess, are they?
Yeah, go for it. Use social media as much as you can. You'll get people giving you information, I'm sure.
Everybody's well used to it this last few weeks. Okay, anything else to add? Anybody want to comment on Emma's report?
No, looking good.
Just to say that once Bucksplaw's launched, then we'll all have more time to focus on that. So that's going to be the next big project after Bucksplaw's up and running.
Yeah.
Okay, then. Right, that brings us down to the chairman's announcements, and I've got none. other than to hope we can get back to normal as soon as possible, of course. The date of the next meeting is the 1st of July. I'm guessing at 2 o'clock again. That's it. Thank you very much for joining in. Goodbye.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.